It's the final edition of Business Morning for the week. Thank you for joining us. I'm BC Adebayo. Crude oil prices are extending gains from the previous day and optimism about recovering fuel demand worldwide despite a surge in coronavirus infections in some U.S. states and, of course, indications of a revival in U.S. crude production. Brent crude futures similarly were up 0.51% earlier on to $41.26 a barrel, but we're also heading towards a small decline for the week. U.S. WTI crude futures gained 0.34% to $38.85 a barrel, also in early trade, but we're also on track for a slight drop for the week. However, there are fears that a spike in COVID-19 infections in southern U.S. states could stall demand recovery, especially as some of those states, such as Florida and Texas, are among the best gasoline consumers, and the prospect of increased U.S. crude production also kept a lid on gains on Friday. Every June the 27th is set aside as the World MSME Day by the United Nations. This is a day dedicated to all MSMEs globally. This year's event falls on a Saturday, which is tomorrow. However, here in Nigeria, the event will be celebrated on June the 30th. Well, joining me now to talk about this is the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, Mr. Diko Rada. And I also have here with me in the studio the Executive Secretary of the National Association of Small and Medium Enterprise, A.K. Obiji. Good morning, and thank you for coming on the program, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Well, let me start the conversation with you, Mr. Rada. The theme of this year's event is COVID-19, the Great Lockdown, and its impact on small businesses. How apt is this theme, especially at a time like this?
I think the theme came at a very good time because we are witnessing the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria and globally. So I think it is right time for us to look at the effect and the takeaway from the COVID-19 as it affects the MSMEs. So I think the theme of this year's event is a good one, and honestly, everybody all over the world are focusing on the MSMEs to revive their economy.
Now, let me come to you, Mr. Obiji. As an organization now charged with the responsibility for coordinating and promoting the growth of SMEs, now, what does the MSME Day actually mean to you?
Thank you very much for that question. The MSME International Day, as the United Nations came up with, means a lot to us as a business membership organization, where you have a lot of micro, small, and medium enterprises as members. It means that it's a day that the world is rededicating its commitment to the promotion and sustainable development of the micro, small, and medium enterprises globally. And Nigeria is no exception. So this one coming up tomorrow, in Nigeria here, the federal government, in collaboration with stakeholders like NassME, UNIDO, and so on and so forth, have set out 30th of this month as a day to commemorate this day. And you can see the theme there is COVID-19, the Great Lockdown, and its impact on micro, small, and medium enterprises. It means a lot. If you read meaning into that theme, it has a lot of deeper meaning. So it means that COVID-19 has had great impact on the development of micro, small, and medium enterprises since it started, because there is a total dislocation and bifurcation of the system. SMEs no longer operate in a calm environment, in a calm setting. You can't move out. If, for example, take Nigeria for example. A lot of SMEs cannot move their products from one location to the other. That's a very serious impact. If you produce goods and you cannot move them from one location to the other, you are in trouble.
Well, this is also to check the spread of the virus.
Absolutely. We are not disputing that. But this is a global pandemic. If you follow the news trend all over the world, you see this pandemic has had serious impact. But some countries are looking at it the other way. How can they maneuver their way out of this so that people can keep on doing what they are doing? It may not be as before, but in a very simple and organized way so that the entire global system will not be entirely disrupted.
All right, let me come back to you, Mr. Diko. Of course, MSMEs are the bedrock of every economy. And in Nigeria, of course, they're faced with a lot of challenges ranging from funding to infrastructure. Now, how do we intend to use this day to push the course for MSMEs?
I think as a way of background, I would like to say that in Nigeria, we started celebrating the MSME Day from 2018. But this 2020 MSME Day came with a different approach because of the situation in which we are. And even before the lockdown, we are sure that MSMEs are facing a lot of challenges in Nigeria. And when this government came on board, they were trying as much hard to see that these challenges are overcome. Part of the challenges of MSMEs in this country are access to funds. It's not that the funds are not available, but rather the procedures and the requirement to meet up the run for MSME is getting very difficult for them. And hence they could not be able to access affordable loans to do their own businesses. Again, there is an issue of lack of infrastructure. Lack of infrastructure, especially workspace where they can put up themselves together and do their own activities, provide the product and services needed in the country. But as a way of addressing this kind of challenges, especially under the COVID-19 lockdown, government came up with a lot of palliatives to access the MSMEs, especially the first thing that was rolled out even before the COVID-19 is the aggregate-based incentive rate services, that is the NassME, in which training is provided to MSMEs and the loan is given to them without much necessary requirements that was needed in other conventional financial institutions. And again, after that, government was able also as early as beginning the lockdown to introduce the COVID-19 loan palliative through the National Microfinance with a huge amount of 50 billion naira for MSMEs. And from the report reaching us, a lot of MSMEs have benefited from it. But we are calling on government and the CBN to put more money because 50 million may not be enough to give a cushion on the MSME, on the effect of the pandemic on MSME. So I think it is important for CBN to roll out another 50 billion in addition to what they have provided so that more MSMEs will benefit from this loan and more MSMEs will be able to develop their businesses from the effect and be able to come out successful and to help develop the economy of this region. It is very important for people to understand that MSME in each country are the engine room. Nigeria has witnessed a recession in 2016, and it was as a result of the effort of the MSME in this country that we are able to go out of the recession as quick as possible. And I believe, even with this COVID-19, MSMEs, if given the necessary support and then targeted palliatives and interventions, the MSME will be able to come out successful after this COVID-19. And you should understand that even with the COVID-19, some new enterprises emerge, and Nigerians are taking advantage of that. And we have seen new entrepreneurs, new businesses emerging, and people are cashing on that, and a lot of things are happening. And we must thank that as a result of the ease in the lockdown, small businesses have started growing, and we are improving on our own businesses because majority of these MSMEs are micro in nature in this country, and hence most of them operate from their households. Most of the MSMEs were able to sell their product even at the smaller quantity within their unit, within the environment in which they live. And then that has really helped in trying to keep on the economy of this country to this level. And and the moratorium provided by the federal government on the federal government intervention or loans, it also helped a lot in solving the problems of the MSME under the lockdown. And SMEDAN also under our own program, which we call OLOP, we are able to provide a moratorium of 1 year on our OLOP loan to beneficiaries of the OLOP so that they will recover fully before they start continue to repay the loan that was provided to them. I think if the MSME will take advantage of all the efforts put in place, and then the government also should consider the macro businesses, because most of these loans of COVID-19 through the national microfinance try only to address the small and medium. Macro businesses, they may not have what it takes to access those kind of funding. I think I think what the macro businesses required is they require to have a grant so that it can support their businesses. Grant from amount of 20 to 100,000 naira, ranging on the kind of businesses those macro businesses are doing. It will really help to bring them back on track and also to keep the economy going.
All right, Mr. Rada. Now, of course, Mr. Obiji, let me come back to you now. You've heard what he said. Of course, it's not all gloom and doom, this period. But of course, let's go back to this year's theme. Of course, it has its major focus on the impact of the lockdown on MSMEs. Of course, you've talked about some of the challenges. But if we're to quantify the losses that we've seen so far during this lockdown, what would you say?
To quantify that is quite huge. From what perspective are you looking at? Is it from the perspective of employment? With regards to employment, a lot of people have lost their jobs. What's the cause? A lot of companies close shop because they cannot meet up with the current challenges. And what they did is to just lay off their staff. Where are those people going to? You know the employment situation in the country. It's quite huge. You understand? Now, because of the issue of lockdown, those of them who do business with other people in other parts of the world cannot even move out and do anything. So they are stagnated. For example, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, AfTA, the major focus of that policy is to ensure that SMEs from different parts of Africa interface and interact with each other through buying and selling of their goods and services. It's supposed to have started 20th of this month, June 20. But where are we? I just want you to gaze
so
and see.
What has happened there?
It's not starting.
Why is it not starting?
With COVID. How do you move? How do you carry your goods from point A to point B, either by air, by sea, or by road? Look at even within Nigeria. I don't know. Your office is very close to the road here. There is lockdown between states. But still, some people still move illegally. But those people who make that effort pay through their nose.
How do you prove that?
I'm telling you, we're all in Nigeria. If you make inquiries, you hear. Those of them that have tried it, if you move from Lagos, for example, say to Benin, you are paying about 3,000 naira by road. I'm not talking about by air. By air, forget about it. Now, you are going to double that or triple it. You know why? The people who ply the road or carry their goods to ply the road say the excess money the transport companies charge is to settle people on the road. So how many SMEs can afford that? When you check your pocket, you know you cannot afford it. You just sit down. And your goods, if your goods are perishable, that's the end of the whole thing. Do you get the point?
But if you're getting these reports that people have to settle on the roads, which shouldn't be in any way, has there been any formal complaints to actually check this? Because these goods have to move anyway.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, we did raise this with the authorities. You know, the ministry we work with very well in Nigeria here is the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, which SMEDAN, where my good friend Dr. Diko is the DG, we raise, with the organized private sector in Nigeria, which NassME is a member of, made up of MAN, NassME, NECA, NASSI. We took this up with the authorities. The authorities now came up with a policy. Say, look, there are some goods or services that should be regarded as essential services. And they listed some of them and requested that if your members belong to such, address a letter to the ministry so that you'll be exempted. And your members doing that will be able to carry this letter. But some cases, even if you carry the letter, the police people who meet you on the road, they will disregard it. Because the ministry official who signed that letter and gave you is not there with you. Do you understand? What I'm telling you is the reality based on the question you asked. That's the truth. So what do? If an SME carrying your goods and you are stopped on the road, you bring out a letter and show. And they tell you, my friend, go and sit down. They would either say, okay, park there. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Do you get what I'm saying? Even if you call an official and tell them, before they will, how many officials in the ministry there have the contacts of these people that are on the roads? How would they locate them? If you call the IG, before the IG will trace and find out where these people are located, it's another difficult job.
Now, let me get the reaction of Dr. Dikko to what you've just said. Now, Mr. Dikko, I'm sure that you heard what Mr. Obiji just said about how difficult it is to move, essential goods across from state. What would be your reaction to all of these?
What he really said is true because I have witnessed it myself. I have been called so many times and there were a lot of complaints by the MSMEs on movement of goods from one location to another. The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has formed a committee, and the committee has been operating for 24 hours every day, and to ensure that wherever there is such kind of hitches, a call will be made to the relevant authorities so that we get those people cleared. But what should be behind the minds of a lot of people is some of these goods are perishable goods which can spoil within a very limited time, despite the fact that was given to those businessmen that move their goods from one location to another. But sometimes the police at the checkpoint or the military at the checkpoint ignore those passes that was given to those MSMEs, and then eventually they had a lot of trouble. Some in the process of doing that, they got their products spoiled, and then some of them got delayed. Some of them have hike in the prices of their transportation because they have to increase the transportation fare because of the unnecessary delays that they witness along the way. I think that has been in place, and that was true, but the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has really made an effort to solve some of these problems. And the problems, some were solved, but some have already suffered due to those issues. But I hope and pray that the relevant authorities will check their officers to ensure that things are done properly so that most of our businessmen and women in Nigeria will not suffer from the misunderstanding of the officers on the road to check the movements.
Dikko, with Mr. Obiji, let me just come back to you quickly because we need to wrap up this conversation now. So where do you see, or what would be the future of MSMEs post-COVID-19? Please give us your answer in less than 1 minute.
The future of MSMEs post-COVID-19, not minding the challenges that this pandemic have thrown up, the other side of it is that we need to be dynamic and progressive-minded in addressing the challenges that have come up. If we're able to address them in a very determined way, I can tell you the future is very, very bright for us. Like today, everybody, look at, we use Zoom to have meetings. That COVID is around does not stop people from meeting to rub minds and come up with ideas on how to solve problems. The other one is that the transport challenge, look, this thing has come to stay,
Yes.
but we should not shy away from it.
Yes.
What are the precautionary measures we should be taking? Social distancing, cover yourself this way, that way. You can still go ahead to do your business.
All right, Mr. Ikebiji, of course, we have to round up this conversation at this point. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, Mr. Dikko Rada. Thanks for joining us. And also Executive Secretary of the National Association of Small and Medium Enterprise, Ikebiji. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Growing the Nigerian economy through exports would be our focus when we return in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now, both the IMF and the World Bank have projected that the Nigerian economy will plunge into severe economic recession, the worst in almost 40 years, due to the collapse of oil prices and the outbreak of the coronavirus disease. And according to the latest World Bank Nigeria Development Update report, the macroeconomic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic will likely be significant. And it says even if Nigeria manages to contain the spread of the virus, and oil represents more than 80% of Nigeria's exports, 30% of its banking sector credit, and 50% of the overall government's revenue. With a drop in oil prices, of course, government revenues are expected to fall from an already low of 8% of GDP in 2019 to a projected 5% in 2020. And so the talk now is how Nigeria can diversify away from oil, and one area to look at is export. Well, I'm being joined by the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Free On Board Global Logistics, Mr. Jimmy Adebakin. He's right here with us in the studio. Good morning, Mr. Adebakin, and thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Now, let's begin this conversation with you giving us a general assessment of the Nigerian non-oil export sector, of course, against the background of the imperative of economic diversification.
Thank you very much one more time. Good morning, Nigeria. To be quite honest with you, a lot of people think it's a crisis. But we believe this is a fantastic opportunity for us as a nation to finally change the narratives of non-oil export in Nigeria from the economy of tomorrow to the economy of today. So I want to, first of all, say thank you very much to Nigerian Export Promotion Council, the ED, Mr. Segun Awolowo. It's fantastic leadership on his part. And from his desk, we all have to come back together, all hands on deck, and ensure that non-oil export is no longer the thing for the passive as the reserve of the rich. Nigeria is a nation of 250 million. If you go to Alaba market today and you ask an average person in Alaba market, how do I import from China? Eyes closed. They can tell you how to import from China. But the same person, if you ask him, how do I export from Nigeria? It would be as if you're speaking Chinese. So the first and foremost thing we have to do, see this as an opportunity, which is what we are trying to do with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, and change the narratives, send the right message to the generals of Nigerian public. And I believe if all hands are on deck, within the next 24 months, we can start focusing on the low-hanging fruits that are possible. We have over 26 million Nigerians in the diaspora. Currently, when they want to eat, they buy from Indian shop, they buy from Pakistani shop. These same Nigerians, with the cooperation of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, let's just focus on the low-hanging fruits, okay? The same people that are importing, everywhere you go globally, Nigerians have a footprint globally. Let's use the same energy that we've used on importing and use it for exporting with that in mind, and making sure we have a very enabling environment at the seaport and at the airport. I totally believe this is the season, finally, that it has become apparent to everybody, from the presidency to everybody on the street. We can no longer rely on crude oil. So let's take this opportunity of COVID-19 and finally let the private sector drive the importance of Nigerian non-oil export activities.
Now, Nigeria recently signed the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Of course, what do we really have to export, given the fact that over 90% of our export is crude oil and gas? Of course, latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics, which came in yesterday, showed that Petroleum products stood out as the most exported commodities for the first quarter of 2020, and that's even with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you very much for that question. Our comparative advantage lies in agriculture. Globally, that's where our comparative advantage lies. I work in logistics, and even from 28th of March, when the lockdown started officially, we're still moving tons of Nigerian food produce from the airport to worldwide destination. We did a lot of chartered flights to ensure that Nigerians in diaspora will not be lacking in anything as far as Nigerian food produce are concerned. Okay, so the agreement for us to have an open skies in Africa, to have open trade in Africa, we are not going to focus on the manufacturing sector. We are going to focus on the produce that is made in Nigeria, our agricultural produce. If you go to North Africa, they need our agricultural produce in North Africa. You go to West Africa, they need our textiles, they need our rubber products in West Africa. So what we need to do are three things. First of all, we have to improve access to the market. The second thing we need to do, we have to improve quality of product, properly labeled, made in Nigerian product. We have to be proud of that brand, made in Nigeria. Then the last thing that we have to do, we have to ensure we have consistency in quality of product that is going out, access, affordability, and quality. Once we can get this done, you go to the airport, you go to the seaport, and look at the packaging of what we are exporting out of Nigeria. It's a global market. We are competing. So the first thing we need to do is these three things. When we make sure that we have access, every Nigerian has access via the support of Nigerian Export Promotion Council. We as a private sector, we have to ensure that freight becomes cheaper for them to export out. Then the Nigerian Export Promotion Council and the private sector should ensure that branding the word. Let's be proud about being Nigerian. There's nothing to be ashamed about being Nigerian. I am a very proud Nigerian. So everything that is living in Nigeria, let's label it proudly, made in Nigeria. China, I remember when we were younger, the Chinese would go around with cameras. I used to wonder what photographs I've taken. But today, China has become the manufacturing plant for the rest of the world. We can focus on non-oil export, the agricultural produce of Nigeria, and within 24 months, I keep saying 24 months, we can change the narratives, and we can be exporting up to 100 tons of cargo from the airports, over 50 containers on a daily basis out of Nigeria with the right policy framework. The time has come for the government to start paying lip service to non-oil export. Let's give Nigerian Export Promotion Council the capacity to be able to give palliative support to every single Nigerian that wants to export. And we are going to be announcing later on next month FOB, which is you'll be able to export from Nigeria to worldwide destination without having to pay for the freight in advance. When we take that one out of the equation, we totally believe that Nigerians will see export as the next opportunity that every one of us should gravitate towards.
What about the issue of the border closure now? Has it in any way affected the export sector?
It has increased the cost of production. It has increased the cost of distribution. And it has reduced access by the other West African neighbors. However, we are still moving cargo by air. We're still moving cargo by sea. It's only by road that the borders have closed. So it's just a redistribution of revenue, redistribution of income. The volumes are still the same. The only challenge is that to export now to West African country has become more expensive because they can no longer move their goods and by the road. Yeah.
Now, how well is the CBN online export portal performing? Of course, would like to know how much value this portal is adding to the export sector.
I hate to say this, but every time you say to an average Nigerian CBN, you eliminate about 90% of Nigerians because they think CBN prints money. Our issue is already how do we make money, okay? If CBN is going to be a proactive supporter of Nigerian export, even during the pandemic, with all the efforts of the federal government to ensure the palliative gets to the masses of Nigerians, a lot of people did not get it. So we have to remove CBN from the equation totally. Let's remove the government totally from this equation. What we want the government and CBN to do, Just give us a neighboring environment. The government have tried. They've tried their best. The time has come for the government to just create a neighboring environment for the private sector. It's the private sector that can drive this phenomenon called non-oil export. And as I said to you before, we have to focus on three things. If CBN is going to help, they have to ensure there's access for all Nigerians to be able to export. They have to ensure that every Nigerian, the cost of freight does not become an issue. And secondly, quality. How do we maintain quality? The portal is a register. After registration, what else? The portal does not tell you if you want to export to Germany, these are the things you can export from Nigeria to Germany. These are the ways that you can make contact with Germans that can import from Nigeria. So let's take the narrative, let's change the narrative, let's make it a public sector-driven platform with the support. I keep saying it. The portfolio has been created already. Nigerian Export Promotion Council is in existence. Let's give the power to Nigerian Export Promotion Council so that they can do what the mandate has been given to them by the federal government of Nigeria to do. And we have a very strong, serious-minded executive director there now that is trying his best to move this corporation to the heights that all of us want to see. CBN, please, give us three things. Improve access, affordability, and give the Nigerian exporters the platform so that we can have standardization. That's what we need.
Now, how do we encourage even the citizens to be more participatory in the export sector? Of course, many would also ask, what is there to export anyway?
Thank you very much. We have spent the last, all our interaction with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, we are building a bridge, we are building a portfolio. The first portfolio we have done is that currently we've now created from 170 countries globally. We now have international partners, 3,760 international partners that have expressed interest to be buying from Nigeria. So we've achieved the problem of access. The second problem we have within this sector is affordability. We are now negotiating with the vessel liners, we are negotiating with the airlines, bringing down the cost of freighting from and out of Nigeria, so that an average Nigerian, they don't have to worry about the cost of freight. And the last thing that we are trying to do, in conjunction with another private sector, is to build a processing and export processing and labeling plant at the airport. We believe by September this year, that plant will be ready. And once that plant is ready, that means every produce that is leaving Nigeria, whether it's pineapple, well, whether it's, I don't want to mention other companies' brand, but as long as they're made in Nigerian product, by the time it gets to the airport, it gets to the seaport, we have to make sure we do the labeling properly, okay? And then push that brand, Nigeria. That's the brand. It's the brand that we need to start pushing now, okay? And I went through Frankfurt just before the COVID-19, and I was at the lounge. And one of the Nigerian musicians' music was being played at the lounge in Frankfurt. And I was saying to the person next to me, I said, is that a Nigerian sound? Yeah, a Nigerian sound. So there's already acceptability for the Nigerian music, Nigerian video scene, movie scene. We have the Nigerians are the Jews of the, I'm sorry to say this, but anywhere you go to in the world, a nation that any city you go to, you don't see a Nigerian in that city, please step back. I went to a place, Latvia, in winter. It was like minus 20 Celsius when I got into Latvia. The first person I saw when I got into the hotel was a guy from the East. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I live in Latvia. I said, you live in Latvia? So what I'm trying to say here is that the brand has been established. We have the energy. We have the vision. All we are asking the government to do now, whether it's from the platform of the CBN, whether it's from the platform of the Ministry of Commerce, enable Nigerian Export Promotion Council so that they can, now all these things that we have worked on, creating the access, making affordability not an issue anymore, and quality, standardization of quality of produce that will be leaving Nigeria, we are working on it. By September, we will have every produce that will be leaving Nigeria will be properly labeled. All the boxes, all the contents will be written on the boxes, and this is what we need. And let us ensure that every man, every woman on the streets of Lagos, in Abuja, in Kano, anywhere you are in Nigeria, let's go back to any of our 774 local government and say, what do we have in this local government? Somebody came to the office yesterday and he wants to export granite to London. I said, sir, have you done your market research? He said, well, I've sent out some sample products already, and a pub, a restaurant in England has requested for him to supply this granite. What has he done? He has made honey granite. Ordinary granite with honey. That's what this guy has done, okay? We have this already. Please, I want to appeal to everybody watching this program. It's about time. Don't let us ask Nigeria anymore what Nigeria can do for us. Let us begin to say, what can I do for Nigeria? And I believe with the right support that is given to the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, the narratives have changed. We are now pushing the new possibilities that is available with Nigerian oil exports.
Quite interesting there. Now, let's talk about the free trade zones. Of course, they've been used in many countries to drive the growth of exports. Could you assess the performance of the Nigerian free trade zones? What are some of the challenges that they are facing?
Okay, if you look at, for instance, the Lekki Free Trade Zone, and you look at the road from Aja that will take you into Lekki, okay, the first thing we need to do is let's widen the road. If you get to the Lekki Free Trade Zone, what is happening is that imports are coming in, and they're converting the imports to finished produce. We are not, at the present time, creating the free zone for export. The free zone currently is primarily geared up to ensure that people can bring imports into Nigeria, then use the free zone to distribute to the West African nations. Okay? How does that improve or support our currency? It doesn't. It doesn't. The only thing is that they're not paying taxes. Okay? They're using the free zone to convert their partially finished produce coming into Nigeria. Yes, they're creating employment. Okay? But let's use that same platform to say we have a export processing zone.
All right.
We want to build the first export processing zone at the airport, but with the right support, the investors are already showing interest. We want to ensure that in Lagos Airport, Abuja Airport, Port Harcourt, Kano, we have all these things in place.
All right. We'll have to wrap up this conversation
Thank you very much.
this point. Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Free on Board Global Logistics, Mr. Jimmy Adebaki. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me on your program. Thank you very much.
It's time now to do a quick review of the Nigerian equities market, and being joined by a stockbroker at TRW, Mr. Abdulrasheed Momo, to give us an analysis of yesterday's performance at the markets. Thank you, Mr. Momo, for speaking with us on the program. Well, it's not been a fantastic week so far at the market. Can you give us more details about what happened yesterday? Mr. Momo, if you can hear me, I was asking you to give us an overview of what happened at the markets yesterday.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, no, well, for some time now, the market has been dropping slightly. From the report I gave, I said the market remains down. There are possibilities of market between at least 24,000 points before we see the rebound. Why I'm telling investors not to be selling that despite the drops, we've not really seen major stocks have actually done really low, except from power and ENS shares. Every activity remains intact. If you look at especially banks, the benefits, the big boys, let's give up lately. These are the big performers that are still in the market in check. Said before, we see how one will go around the I don't think investors to be scared of everything.
Broker at TRW, Mr. Abdulrasheed Momo, thanks for speaking with us. We'll do a crossover to London as well as the debt and currencies market in just a moment. Do join us again. Juliana Olayinka is ready to talk us through some of today's major business headlines coming from the UK. Good morning, Juliana. With the continued rise in coronavirus cases and the gloomy economic outlook, how have the markets woken up this Friday morning?
Good morning, Bissy. Well, in London, it's opened up in positive territory, and I think it's kind of echoed what we've seen in Asia and in America overnight. The biggest story here in the UK this morning in terms of the FTSE is Tesco. They released their first quarter trading update, and it was pretty positive, although their shares did dive 2% at the release of that. They showed that their sales rose by 9% in the first 3 quarters in the year, reaching £9.9 billion. Of course, at the beginning of the year, a lot of Londoners and the rest of the UK were stockpiling, rushing to the supermarket to fill their shelves, knowing that they would be on lockdown. And they did show as well that their online sales rose by 48%, and the average transactions in Tesco rose by 64%. However, even though people were rushing to the supermarkets because they had bought so much shopping, they weren't, of course, frequenting these supermarkets regularly. So the frequency dropped by 32%. I think there are 2 reasons as to why their shares did rally off this morning. One is because of Tesco Bank. They do have a banking aspect of their business. And like most of the banks here in the UK, they have been giving out some sort of coronavirus loan. And so they've written off about £200 million worth of bad debt because, as we know, and as a lot of analysts have suggested, there are several hundreds of thousands of people that unfortunately will not be able to pay that money back. And also as well, their chief executive, he is in a row with shareholders, and they've got their AGM today. I believe he's on about £6 million a year salary, and he's trying to claim for a £2 million bonus. So it'd be interesting to see if that gets through. As their shares fell this morning by 2%, Sainsbury's were quickly after them, and their shares fell 1.5% at early trading.
Now, what is British Airways up to by asking its longest-serving cabin crew to take a 20% basic pay cut and change working patterns if they are to be retained?
Well, it depends, the answer on who you're talking to. But I've got to say there is a lot of anger that's growing for BA, which is still the UK national carrier flag. We do have some MPs that have called BA a national disgrace. They're not happy with the way they've been treating staff. And this 20% pay cut comes just a couple of weeks after BA announced that they would be axing 12,000 jobs. So there's so many issues concerning their staff who at the moment, of course, are on furlough, and many of them are not sure whether or not they'll be getting their jobs back. And now, because of this announcement that was made to about 14,000 staff yesterday, it's expected that 14,000 individuals will be losing 1/5 of their pay. BA have said that they're doing this because, of course, the coronavirus pandemic has caused such an issue for them. They want to ensure that they have longevity in the market, and by doing this, they've got to restructure pay and restructure working hours. Of course, the unions don't think so, and they are at the moment in talks with BALPA. They're a really popular union here in the UK, and they look after pilots. BA say at the moment, BALPA union are the only union talking to them, and they are trying to sort out some redundancy because there are some pilots and some individuals that quite frankly do not want to work for BA again, but because they've given them so much service, they want to get what they believe that they deserve. So yes, as I said, the MPs here in the UK are not happy about it. There have been some ongoing investigations. I think particularly every time there's a Prime Minister questions here in the UK, there is 1 or 2 MPs that say it should be completely wrong for some of these massive firms to take the furlough scheme, which is provided by the taxpayer, and all of a sudden they'll be getting rid of their staff. So a lot of people are not happy, but these talks are still ongoing.
Another airline, EasyJet, says it has sold and leased back 6 aircraft for aggregate cash sales of $255 million. What does the low-cost carrier hope to use the proceeds for?
Well, there's only one thing, and that's COVID-19, I believe, Bissy. EasyJet has been in trouble just as much as other airlines have. They've taken out several loans from the government, including putting their staff on furlough. They have started up some journeys between the UK and France and some domestic flights, but it's just not enough to cover their costs. So they have begun leasing. I believe they've leased 6 of their Airbus A320 Neos to a Japanese firm, and they're doing that between 110 and 122 months. And as you said, that's given them some reserves of about £200 million. They're hoping to do this for the foreseeable future because they do have fleets that are literally just sitting on the tarmac. They'd rather crawl back some of the money. And as I said, EasyJet bosses have said that they're using this money to store some liquidity so they can weather the storm of COVID-19.
All right, Juliana, thanks for this update, and do have a great weekend. And back home at the debt and currencies market, let's speak to the head fixed income at UBA, Bankole Odusoye, for a quick review. Good morning, Bankole. Thanks for joining us. Tell us, how much of a demand are we likely to see at the markets today?
Oh, thank you. The market is bullish, and you got it rightly. The reason is simply because most of the maturing funds from OMO and coupons coming in from bonds are actually chasing fewer securities, given the restriction most local corporates have from going back into the OMO market. Currently, the banking system is illiquid to the tune of lower than 20 billion naira. Most banks are currently being funded on the overnight at the rate of 15%, which is very high. Going into next month, because this month is ended, we are going to receive more than 200 billion in coupons from 4 different types of FGM bonds. These funds will go into pursuit of Nigerian Treasury bills, which are already at 3% and below at the auction, and in the secondary market as low as 2%. And then you have seen this decline in yield also on FGM bond in the secondary market. Upon that, behind that, coming 2 weeks after from the bond auction we saw 2 weeks ago. Yields have dropped between 100 and 200 basis points as prices continue to soar, simply because there are fewer instruments, debt instruments in the market compared to the amounts chasing them currently.
Now, what would be your projections for the coming week?
It's going to remain bullish. We expect prices to soar up further. And as most local corporates look for better yield on investments, we see appetite going towards the longer end of the bond, 2049, 2050 in particular. We expect rates to drop further at the next month's bond auction and the NTB ones also. However, there's still some uncertainty concerning how much the DMO will be willing to offer by way of debt securities, because we don't have the issuance calendar yet. We expect that to come in the next week, and then this shapes preparation going into next month and the next auction.
Head fixed income at UBA, Bankole Odusoye, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. And that's where we wrap up today's program. Thank you for watching. I am Bisi Adebayo.